Heyo everybody, Haku here with my read-through for Magical Girl Raising Project, or Mahou Shoujo Ikusei Keikaku, JOKERS Chapter 1, Part 2. So this time around I'm gonna try to get from page 22 to page 47 or 48, somewhere around there is when there's a scene break I want to stop at. There's one at 44, but I want to stop around like 48 or whatever. So that I can do this in 3 parts. I don't want to rush it, of course, but if I can do it in 3 parts, so that I can sort of get it done in a more timely fashion or give you more per video, then I'm going to do it that way. But either way, I'm just doing what I can. So yeah, the first part of this, I almost called it the first chapter because it seems that way as long as it was, I really liked. We have this prologue with Shadowgale and Flea that I think is one of those things where it's probably not going to play into the actual arc until like right at the end, or at least near the end. It's just one of those things where the characters aren't going to be directly involved in the arc, so it's like, hey, this is what's going on with these characters, and then at like maybe the end of the arc, Lapis Lazuli will show up and give the orb to, or the gem or whatever, to Snow White. And that'll probably be like near or at the end of it, maybe even in the epilogue. So I think that's one of those things. We got to see Fall again, which is great, talking about what's going on with Snow White, and also we got to see Prism Cherry, who is new and who I really like just from being introduced to them, and they met a magical girl at the very end of what we saw of them, a classmate named Princess Deluge. So yeah, from here on we're starting at page 22 with Prism Cherry, and I'm going to try to record this all at once, but I don't know what my battery's doing, so we'll see how this goes. I'm going to try to record it all at once though. But if not, I'll just stitch it together, 2 different recording parts as I've done millions of times before, and we'll just move on that way. So either way, starting at page 22, Prism Cherry, as I said, it was irregular of her to transform on the supermarket rooftop. Prism Cherry's responsible district wasn't the entirety of S-City. Tonoe Town, the district with the supermarket, was completely out of her territory. Originally, she didn't have to transform there. There was a fireworks display at a nearby castle town that day. It looked very good when viewed from the rooftop of the supermarket. She transformed into a magical girl and climbed on the roof, and from there she de-transformed. Fireworks were more beautiful when you see them using a human's vision than a magical girl's night vision. When the fireworks were over, she transformed once more and ran down the rooftop. Operating outside your assigned district as a magical girl was basically forbidden, but if she was found out, she'd just give some kind of explanation and probably be given a glare and an alright then. Prism Cherry didn't originally work hard on her magical girl activities. After realizing that even as a magical girl she was ordinary, she lost motivation for doing activities. She even did her original job of helping people once every 3 days, and then once every 4 days, once every 5 days, and reduced their frequency. Now she goes around once every week at nights. Kagami, you're a magical girl, aren't you? I saw you transform on the roof of the supermarket. Her heartbeat jumped when she heard that from her classmate, Nami Aoki. When she became a magical girl, she'd been explained that if someone were to know her real identity as a magical girl, they'll take away her ability to transform and all her memories as a magical girl. Being glared at from higher-ups wasn't a problem, but even mischievous magical girls, when faced with their magical powers being taken, will flutter in a panic. I'm also a magical girl. That's why she was relieved when she continued afterward. If they were colleagues, then knowing her magical girl identity isn't a problem. Besides, there wouldn't be any humans that could see anything by the supermarket rooftop in the middle of the night. If it weren't a magical girl, it would have been either a bird, a monster, or an alien. While being a little embarrassed with her unnecessary worries, Sakura lowered her tone and replied, Aoki, you're a magical girl too, huh? They're in the same class, but the relationship was only that of greeting each other if they happened to meet. She was with the flashy group, and Sakura was with the usual group, so they were able to live separately in the classroom. Because of that, while they were never able to play or talk too deeply with each other, one semester had already passed midway. Right? Nami and Sakura quickly exchanged phone numbers and promised to meet tonight at 12:30 on the roof of the supermarket. Looking at Nami's back, who was walking away to her friends, she seemed somewhat trustworthy. She didn't know many people who were magical girls. Having her classmate be a fellow magical girl, that was a huge coincidence. She was excited as her heartbeat accelerated as well. When her friend asked, "What were you talking about with Aoki?" she replied, "Oh, it's just a drama show we watched yesterday." Class begun, her heartbeat slowed, her head cooled down, and her heart relaxed. One question arose. This entire district was Prism Cherry's area of responsibility. The supermarket was outside of that, but she didn't hear anything about a new magical girl being assigned there. Yet, why was Nami Aoki a magical girl who saw her on the roof? Once she worried about something, other things began to get out of hand. At lunch break, she went to the roof and took out her magical phone, asking her regional leader, "Are there any magical girls in charge of the area around the supermarket?" She got an answer during lunch break. "There's no one there." Then why was Nami Aoki a magical girl? Sakura tilted her head, but in the end she thought it'd be better to ask her directly. So she headed to the roof of the supermarket at 12:30 that night. Beyond one of the letters of the supermarket sign was a magical girl. She had scaly stockings that only covered her right leg. Similar scaly stockings covered her left shoulder, and there was a large jewel buried in a tiara on her head. She had a trident that extended beyond her height that made her look like the princess of the sea. No matter how you look at her, there was no way she wasn't a magical girl. Aoki? Don't say that, okay? I'm not Aoki when I'm like this. She raised her right leg, raising her trident obliquely. Her face had a so-called texture as she slightly raised her jaw and looked properly at Prism Cherry. Cherry unknowingly walked backwards when confronted with that force, and her back hit the wire mesh of the roof. The blue torrent, Princess Deluge. Oh, so she was just doing a pose. She finally noticed after about 10 seconds. Nami Aoki, the magical girl Princess Deluge, dropped her posture and relaxed her expression. "And who are you?" I'm Prism Cherry." She has decided on a pose and an intro dialogue before, but she didn't have the courage to perform it in public. "Prism Cherry, that's a cute name." She's happy that she got praised. While being aware of her shyness, she replied back, "Princess Deluge is pretty cool too. In fact, the name Princess actually sounds very reliable. So, which lab did you come from, Prism Cherry?" "Oh, lab. So she might be one of the artificial magical girls." "Huh?" Her bashfulness disappeared. She had been told something mysterious. She understood that much, yet for how mysterious it was, she was a little hesitant to ask. And perhaps she looked back with a blank expression because Princess Deluge tilted her head slightly. And of course, their real names, Ao being blue and Nami being wave, and then for Prism Cherry, Kagami, or Sakura obviously being cherry blossom, and Kagami being mirror. So, their names definitely have a lot to do with their magical girl forms. Bashfulness disappeared. Tilted her head slightly. Okay. You're a magical girl, right, Prism Cherry? "I am, but which lab's magical girl are you? I thought I was the only one from this city's lab." Lab? What do you mean by those?" "Huh?" They're both just confused at each other. Prism Cherry didn't know anything about magical girls belonging to labs. Princess Deluge seems to think that magical girls are affiliated with labs. Her regional leader had guaranteed that there were no magical girls besides you, Prism Cherry. They didn't seem to be the type of people who'd lie, and there was no reason for them to. Princess Deluge looked like your normal magical girl from her appearance. Her weapon was a bit much, but it's not like she hasn't seen magical girls wielding weapons like these before. Yet it defied common sense, belonging to a lab that she's never even heard of, and thinking of it so naturally too. And this is interesting, so there could be like two totally different sides, like the Land of Magic magical girls, who we know belong to different factions, but then a completely different faction altogether of the artificial magical girls. She wasn't a normal magical girl, but her heartbeat pulsed. This is Princess Cherry, I think they meant Prism Cherry, could contact her regional leader here. What Princess Deluge was saying didn't make any sense for a magical girl. She could contact her higher-ups to confirm what was going on. Report, contact, consult. Do not forget this, she was told with a sour mouth back at her test. I was thinking of getting some friends I want you to meet. That's okay, right? Friends? You have friends? I do. Don't you, Prism Cherry? I've got someone that's kind of like a boss. Whoa, that's so cool, so professional. Here, Prism Cherry chose to do something against what she was taught. I want to meet them too. I want to meet your friends, Princess Deluge. You do? That's great. They're all really good girls. I've been alone as a magical girl all this time, you see. I really want some friends. You've been alone. That sounds rough. Somehow she's explaining away her thoughts to her. She seemed unfamiliar and awkward, but she was desperate. Perhaps after this conversation she could become special like she's always wanted. Once you think of it that way, anyone will become desperate. All right, let's go together then. She made a gutsy pose inside herself and then nodded greatly. From the supermarket roof, she went to the west side of Tonoe Town. From one building's rooftop to another, while jumping behind following Deluge, she also ran. When she was led to an abandoned factory on the outskirts of town, her expectations wilted a bit. But when Deluge opened the rusty door and led her underground, that wilted expectation bulged like a lump. Rather than a lab, you'd call a place like this a secret base. She went down the ladder. Further on was a shiny, large door made of metal. Deluge opened it easily. You actually need a password to open and close it, but it's kinda annoying, so I didn't set it. Setting passwords already sound annoying in the first place. Okay, I'll just say it that way. Deluge seemed embarrassed enough because it felt like she was making excuses, so she proceeded onward. Following behind her, Prism Cherry finally encountered something special. And now we're jumping to Fall's side of things. Okay? One reaction. The only magical girl within a 100-meter radius is just you, Pone, Snow White. Can you widen the range? I can only do up to 200 meters, Pone. Anything wider than that is nothing that normal magical phones can do. Then increase it to 200. All right, Pone. Evening. It was a time zone where dusk exuded from beyond the buildings. She hasn't found the laboratory making man-made magical girls in this city yet. Mascot characters were given to certain magical girls. They were for supporting magical girls that the Land of Magic considers are doing useful activities. Having a mascot character was also simultaneously kind of a status. But furthermore, they're individuals. There are many mascot characters that assert that they aren't just medals or trophies. Mascot characters also have the role of correcting magical girls who've gone to the wrong path. The role isn't to just blindly follow them. But within the mascot characters, the cyber fairy types didn't have that kind of splendid self-ego. Even if they were treated as trophies, they wouldn't complain. They were made to unconditionally love magical girls from the start, as if they were made to work for magical girls. When Fall looked back at himself, he always felt something. Maybe it was an inferiority complex, it may even be a feeling of superiority. Maybe it's something else entirely, but he couldn't put it into words. Fall's origins were special. As a defective item, Fall only waited for disposal, and Keek, who was like a god within the cyber realm, picked him up, using her power to remodel him and distorted him. Fall did not appreciate Keek. Even if he had higher specs than the regular FA series Cyber Fairy, he never thought that was a good thing. Keek never showed Fall tenderness or kindness. Keek was distorted. She believed she was correct. She had decided anyone other than her was wrong. Therefore the magical girl hunter had hunted her. Someday, somewhere, she was only going to fall. She should have failed, and she did. He didn't appreciate her. He had no sympathy for her. Yet thinking about Keek, he still felt sad. When he thought of his current master, Snow White, it became even more complex. He hated Snow White. It'd be much simpler to think about her. Or if he hated Snow White, it'd be much simpler to think about her. Maybe filling up with hatred and abusiveness due to wanting to avenge his former master. However, Fall didn't hate Snow White. Cyber Fairy's emotions were something that was artificially created by a program. If they hadn't had that function, maybe it would have been better, thought Fall masochistically, and that masochistic feeling was also the result of the program. Fall didn't want to hate his creators. Love, hate, sadness, and happiness were all calculated, an algorithm with no guaranteed solution. Just because they have artificial emotions doesn't make them decent. His predecessors would argue that in fiction. 200 meters increased, Bone. Still, there's no change in reaction. Understood. He didn't fail to watch the surroundings of Koyuki Himekawa while she was walking in the shopping district. He won't let go of his vigilance. She was different. She never looked joyed or sad in the middle of battle. Even before battle, she showed no signs of lust. Contrary to Keek, who was absurdly expressive in her emotions, she was aware of herself and was somber. Okay, now there's the blank page, and it's before an illustration. And that's Koyuki walking around. Ah, so cute. And of course, Koyuki with Yuki in her name, and Hime in her surname, Princess in Snow. Again, leading into her magical girl persona. But moving along, we're at page 31 now. Snow White had not heard what Fall had been thinking beside her. Snow White doesn't talk about these things, and Fall didn't want to ask these scary questions. The cyber fairy Fav was involved heavily in Clanberry's test, and he was an FA series. So he wondered if Snow White also didn't think well of Fall, who was also an FA series. Among those who passed through Clanberry's tests, just seeing an FA series would give them nausea and trigger flashbacks. Snow White used Fall because he was useful. Keek remodeled him so that his virtual space would be untouchable even by the land of magic. He was a mascot character that was given special orders. If you thought about the reason he was created, he wasn't supposed to be enveloped with a sense of superiority, but he had no other functions. In order to freely use him, his specs didn't allow for anything else. While he was monitoring the presence of magical girls within a 200-meter radius, since Snow White shared her transformation mechanism with him, no matter how sudden an accident would happen, they could respond in nanoseconds. Furthermore, there were programs hidden in the mobile phones of Snow White's family, relatives, friends, acquaintances, and anyone she thought of, in case of an emergency. They'd be pulled into the virtual space that Keek normally uses. Because of this, it was possible to mercilessly attack magical girls who would use relationships as shields. To ensure supremacy as a proper magical girl, Keek had continued researching anime and manga. She had her own opinions on magical girl enemies, so you could say this was a unique function of her. And it's cool that now that Keek is kind of like in a pocket dimension of her own space somewhere, they can use the space she was using to send people there to protect them, which is cool. Alright. Snow White's alias as the magical girl hunter had made villains cower in fear, but you could say that just by doing that, she's already done a severe attack against them. This function was an absurd concept, born by referencing magical girl anime and manga, but for Snow White as she is now, this was probably more necessary than anything else. A student is coming this way, Pone. She's moving fast, and her actions are dull, Pone. Should I reduce the radius, Pone? Reduce precision and keep the radius intact. All of his functions were far from that of a normal magical phone, or even an administrator's phone. They were beyond super technology. Fall knew that he was competent. He also knew that Snow White understood this. You're okay with reducing the accuracy, Pone? Just to the minimum required. S City was the second largest city in the prefecture, after the prefectural capital. Compared to Snow White's hometown N City, it was smaller in size but higher in population density. Downtown during the evenings, there was no change to the large amounts of people in the city center. Naturally, there should have been a magical girl in charge, but Snow White came in quietly without telling them. Koyuki. Huh? Was the local high school girl. A girl with a school uniform began talking to Snow White. He didn't assume she had an acquaintance here. Snow White, untransformed as Koyuki Himekawa, was slightly confused as she responded to the girl's appearance. Akari? You are Koyuki. It's been so long. Fall reconfirmed his application. If this was a magical girl, even if she was untransformed, there would be a reaction. There was no change, and the magical girls in his surroundings were still only one. The girl talking to Koyuki was not a magical girl. Compared to the petite Koyuki, the girl was about half a head taller. Her hair was dyed in a light brown color and brushed off until her shoulder blades. She had a flat student's bag with some small flashy accessories. She didn't look like the type who'd be good friends with Koyuki, but the two were both smiling. The two of them seemed to be classmates during elementary school. They excitedly began talking about trivial things like, where'd you go after moving? Where's your high school now? The magical girl hunter Snow White looked like a girl that acted her age when she does things like this, even though she wasn't careless with her inner thoughts, and paid attention to her surroundings. She talked about the days she remembered as a child without even skipping a beat. Snow White's magical girlfriend Ripple was by her side. Even after transforming into a magical girl, there was a smile on her face, laughing, poking, and giggling with a face that Fall's never seen before. Fall, who had only had inorganic exchanges with her, became envious, and there was also some jealousy. Ripple went missing in the B-City incident she was involved in. He didn't want to remember that time. Snow White was determined to continue to head to B-City to find Ripple. She rushed around the hospitals and the scenes of the crime. While listening to the stories of the surviving magical girls, her clenched fists were trembling above her knees. Fall also used a variety of functions to track down Ripple, but in the end he couldn't find her. And then he got that text message. When Snow White knew that it was sent from Ripple's magical phone, he was able to see a change in her face that he hasn't seen in a long time. Fall couldn't change Snow White's expressions. With Ripple, she could change not only her expression, but also make her begin to act again. Okay. Alright. Then I'll see you later. Okay, text me, alright? Tell Yo-chan and Sumi-chan I said hi. While the girl vigorously waved her right hand and disappeared into the crowded area, the smile that was on Koyuki's face faded as she took a deep breath. She took out the magical phone in her pocket and pressed it with her finger. Fall, any reaction? No change. There's nothing, Pone. I was expecting her to bring up Sota or Lapicel. Interesting, though. There's nothing, Pone. Really. I'm not lying, Pone. Something wrong, Pone? Snow White narrowed her eyes and looked at the crowd where the girl disappeared to. No, nothing. More importantly, we're not going home tonight. Maybe since he's only sensing one magical girl, though, it's possible that Fall can't sense the artificial ones. Like, Fall is able to sense Prism Cherry in the area, but he can't sense Deluge or her friends. At least that'd be a prediction I'd have, maybe. More importantly, we're not going home tonight. Pardon? Until we catch something, we're staying here. In this city, man-made magical girls were being studied. He thought that mail was nothing but a trick, yet it was sent through Ripple's magical phone, so it wouldn't be an ordinary trick. Okay, just checking my battery life, and we are at page 34. I'm going to save really quick to make sure this all saves, and get a sip of drink, and then I'll continue on with the next scene. Okay, continuing on to page 34, we've got Princess Inferno. So that's interesting. If she has a name similar to Princess Deluge, and I'm assuming that's the Shala Gorgon one, then the Bowsette one, she could be like Princess Landslide? Or Princess... I don't know, Princess Landslide, Princess Earthquake. That's kind of a weird name. And would that make the other one Magical... I love the name Magical Olive, though, really. So I might still call her that regardless of her real name. But I wonder if that means she's like Princess Tornado, Princess Hurricane, Princess Windstorm, something like that maybe. Either way, we have Princess Inferno now at page 34. And I really like that last section. I love that we're seeing Snow White's stuff through Fall's point of view and learning Fall's thoughts on things. He's awesome. And then, because they're the FA series, I'm still waiting for FAQ. I'm still waiting for it. Princess Inferno. The emergency alarm sounded. Their chat completely stopped. While everyone was watching, the main monitor displayed new disruptor has appeared. The sound of Prism Cherry's gulping could be heard all this way. The tension had increased, but she was comfortable. Continuing on, 3 units, 2 soldier class, 1 night class. Location, Mount Takatoko. They read the map data on their phones, and everyone stood up at once. Let's go. You don't have to tell me twice. I'm always the first to go anyway. Don't go all out at once, though. We'll get stuck in the entrance. The bulkhead doors opened one after another, and without giving any orders, they ran along the passageway. as if they had no sense of unity. However, they're still able to collect themselves until now. It was worse when they first started out, since they all ran while holding their weapons. The tip of Deluge's trident scratched Quake's tail. Okay, so Quake then. So Princess Quake and Princess Tempest then? Quake's tail and Tempest cried when she cut her finger. Okay. But now they're used to this. They left the training grounds. From the halls they entered the elevator and headed above ground. The dust-filled elevator headed up, and when the side doors opened up, Princess Tempest, who was waiting and going now, literally flew away. She was the only one of the pure elements with the ability to fly. Whenever she sees her fly off first, honestly, she became a bit jealous. However, she can't lose to her. Quake, Deluge, Inferno, and Prism Cherry ran after her. From the back door of the waste factory, they ran toward the nearby building. Never letting up their momentum, they ran up the building walls and toward the roof. From there, they went to the next building, and the next, and then the head of a telephone pole. They jumped with a good tempo. Fundamentally, they shouldn't be caught by human eyes, but although they were told that this was an emergency. Furthermore, even they don't have to worry about the human vision being able to follow a magical girl's movement speed. They bent their foot, stretched it, and placed power on their knees, and released. Running, jumping, Princess Inferno, Akari Hiyama. Okay, so she is Akari. Snow White's friend also became a magical girl. She's Princess Inferno. Akari Hiyama knew more than anyone how fun it was. And of course Hiyama, he meaning sun or flame, and Yama being mountain. And then Akari being light, but red light, I think, in particular. So it's like red light, and then kind of volcano, fire, and mountain. So that's really, really cool. Again, I love how their names are really fitting in with their magical girl personas. And more than anyone, how fun it was. For a time, she thought that she'd never be able to run again. Look at me now, stupid doctor. I can run happily again, she thought in her heart. Wait, she shouldn't be so mean as to say stupid doctor, but rather it was like he helped her. She thought as she absorbed that feeling into her head. Also, this basically confirms, what I was saying, that Fall couldn't tell she was a magical girl because she was man-made. Doctor, look, I can run happily again, she thought. Her expression changed to a soft one. She could hear the sounds of footsteps following behind her as she looked over her shoulder to see Prism Cherry, looking like she was running desperately. Deluge was by her side supporting her. Prism Cherry could definitely follow up with her. The first one or two times the five of them were dispatched, Prism Cherry would stray behind the middle of the dispatch, since she couldn't follow the pure element speed like this, which would put them in a difficult situation. Since this was an emergency situation to save the world from crisis, they couldn't afford to slow down for her. She grabbed a steel fence on the insurance building rooftop and made a sharp turn, unable to bear the shock. The steel fence became distorted, its pieces falling down toward the cracked concrete below. Later, they'll apply for repairs. They passed through the buildings, across the railroads, running in the alleyways, jumping over overhead structures. Since they didn't follow the railway line, they were neither hit nor ran over by a train. Running across and jumping over things in one direction in the middle of the night meant that construction was also suspended. This was much faster than jumping from building to building. They followed the navigation that was given from the Princess Jewel, as they went underneath an overpass. Afterward, without losing pace, they went to a mountain and bamboo path, from cliffside to cliffside, and even climbed up to reach their destination above. There, Tempest's index finger was pointing at a sludge-like mass undulating at the edge of the marshes. Two of them humanoid, one of them shaped like a bear. As reported, two soldier classes and one knight class. Looks like we made it. Tempest, don't run off like that. So they're actually fighting monsters, whatever these monsters are. But you guys are so slow. Come on, line up properly. There's bad footing here, so be careful. No, a bit closer. If we fall, it'll be super uncool. Everyone ready? The blue torrent, Princess Deluge. The red blaze, Princess Inferno. The white whirlwind, Princess Tempest. The black earth, Princess Quake. Princess Quake's Princess Jewel was actually shining a yellow color, but she'd be out of place if she said the yellow. So, after discussing with everyone, since her costume was mostly a black color scheme, she now says the black earth. Okay. And of course, I think that's probably something to do with the her not fitting in because of the syllables, since yellow would just be ki or kiro, and black is just kuro, so it would fit in with shiro, ako, and ao, or shiro, aka, and ao. So of course, it's probably that's why she had to do it to match everyone else. The Prism Dawn, Prism Cherry. Princess Cherry didn't do the primary color something. She did the Prism Dawn. They didn't, okay, so I think they meant Prism Cherry again. Prism Cherry didn't do the primary color something. She did the Prism Dawn. They didn't really have to have any color, didn't really have any color to her. And since Prism Cherry refrained by saying, "I'm not originally one of your members, so I don't have to announce myself," but it'd be unfortunate if she's the only one that didn't do it. Not to mention Prism Cherry's light-based. It'd be perfect as their 5th member. If they had a 6th member, it'd have to be someone dark-based. Later on, they'd have to rethink everything again, especially since Quake already used the black. They'd have to change their current group pose centered on Cherry. Oh man, I love their the way they kind of do things. Again, it's reminiscent of the way that Lapis Lazuli and Masked Wonder like to do their kind of, what do I want to call it? Their theatrical magical girling. When they all finished announcing themselves, the Disruptors finished materializing as well. The 2 soldier classes had a Dove Rider like dirty black color and bat-like wings grew on their backs. Sharp claws, fang teeth, beast-like faces, and long tails that made them look demonic. The Night class had a goat-like face with an adult upper male body as well as a goat lower body. It was clear they were demonic. And we do know demons exist, so yeah, I guess this makes sense. But also demons are super, super strong. Well, I guess super strong for more inexperienced magical girls, because Clanberry was special, but Clanberry was able to defeat one as a little girl, as a magical girl in training. Either way, their arms were as thick as Tempest's waist, their entire body was flat, looking like a statue made of sludge. Rather than being demonic, these Disruptors, if any human from long ago would have fought them, they'd probably believe they were demons. Disruptors were invaders sent from another world to Earth from before the birth of civilization, so it was no wonder that the ancient humans that sensed their threat would send a message to their future descendants as if they were legends. The professor that had made these 4 into magical girls had told them as much. If they were living normal lives, they would never know actual history. In history class, even though she wasn't that good at history class, she loved these kind of things. Currently, in S-City, Disruptors, who have almost never been there before, are now active. When the Japanese government saw the activities, they decided to install disruptor monitoring bases, is what they said. There was no way to build underground bases like that without some kind of governmental power. When she had first heard this, she laughed, but now she was convinced. The 5 of us combined, the pure elements. Her voice was beautiful, her left hand was on her princess jewel, praying. Her raised right hand materialized a crescent blade, pointing it toward the roaring Disruptors. Cherry flash. From behind her, an intense light flashed. Prism Cherry's hand mirror projected a flash of light. Dark creatures like the Disruptors hate light. That's why they always show up in the middle of the night in places where no one's around. The Disruptors cried in agony as they were exposed to light that was too intense even for humans. They curled their body and covered their faces with their arms, and using her power to actually have light manipulation is a really OP use of a very specific, or what would seem like a very specific power, which is really cool. They curled their body and covered their faces with their arms. They were already finished. Bringing down the hammer, swinging the sword, spinning the boomerang, drawing out the trident. In less than a second, the 3 Disruptors were crushed into their original black chunky mass and melted to the ground. Tempest yelled out, "We did it!" Deluge and Prism Cherry high-fived. Today they managed to save the world again, and her heart filled up with a certain satisfaction. This feels like just normal-ass magical girl stuff, and I love it. Okay, since we finished faster than expected, let's do some battle training when we get back. What? I thought we'd be done for the day. I always think of skipping, Tempest. You need to put in some work too, you know. But Inferno skips all the time. I heard Inferno's mom saying, my daughter really hates studying. Even before tests, she just plays around. Hey, you can't bring my mom into this. In the late night sky, the girls' laughing voices and the frogs' croaks could be heard echoing. And we've made it to page 39. And my battery looking very, very scarce. But either way, I'm going to continue ahead, but I'm going to save this just to be sure. Sorry about that. My battery was at a place where it could have died at any moment, so rather than take the chance of it dying in the middle of me reading something, I was like, I'll go ahead and just record this, the rest of this the next day. So, yeah, we're going to continue onward, starting from page 39 where we were with the Prism Cherry scene break, right after I guess we just got done with Princess Inferno. And I'm going to read until page 48 so that I can do this chapter in 3 parts. No particular reason. It's not like I wanted to do it specifically in 3 parts. I just feel like, you know, it divides up pretty well that way. Page 1 to 21, then 22 to 48, and then 49 to 72. It splits up pretty evenly. So figured I'd do it that way. So, yeah, I will say, though, before I continue on reading into this next section, I really like the things we saw from Fall's point of view. Seeing Snow White's story from his point of view, that way we keep some things with her mysterious, and we get to sort of explore his, I don't want to say humanity, really, but his existence and what it's like to actually be a cyber fairy. I think that's really creative. And in addition to that, I'm liking this so much more than Limited already, because even in the beginning, Limited was like, it was a little bit slowly paced, but it also felt like we didn't really get that deep into the characters and their connections, and who they are and stuff, and what they were thinking, and yet we've got that for quite a few characters and some really cool connections between them just already within less than a chapter, about half a chapter at this point. So I'm going to continue on. We're at page 39 at Prism Cherry. So starting from there, a hammer was about to hit, and the girl who bent to avoid it by a paper-thin margin drew her trident. The tip of her trident was repelled by a crescent sword, and all 3 of them retreated at once as a boomerang sliced through the air. Faster than the boomerang could return, the crescent sword was swung, and the boomerang girl dodged it lightly and sharply caught the boomerang in the air. Rather than a real battle, it seemed almost like a death match. Just touching the boomerang with your fingers could cut it. You could see the blades shine like real knives. The hammer was a large cube with 2 sharp chunks. Not to mention, the handle had a very aggressive-looking design. If you were hit by that, you'd be crushed like a frog. The crescent sword and the trident had a combination of weight, reach, and sharpness. If they were hit with it normally, they'd die. Magical girls who were far stronger than humans would die. Though there were some that was just a little sturdier than that. When she saw a battle training conducted by Mahou's school, which she was interested in at the time, she thought that if I joined this, I'll definitely die. But even Mahou's school didn't train with swords and blunt weapons. They had the minimum considerations so that they wouldn't kill or be killed. When she saw this battle training for the first time, she panicked. The crescent sword being swung up and down, hitting a girl's cranium, having that panic being passed to her could make her faint. Prism Cherry noticed the stain on the left monitor and scratched it off with her thumb. Right now she can afford to notice stains on the monitors. The 4 girls fighting looked like they were enjoying themselves. She didn't think she had either the skill nor the power to join up with them and fight. In the 30-square-meter room, the 4 magical girls were jumbled together, effortlessly changing from offense and defense, one moment working together, one moment betraying each other, trying to surprise their enemy or attacking against their weapons, not having any time to blink. While trying to avoid the boomerang, the hammer using girl couldn't avoid the trident from behind her, directly hitting the center of her spinal cord. Boing, she heard an unforgettable sound. The buzzer rang, the rectangular entrance blocked by a door slid open. When someone manages to land a hit, the simulated battle would end. The 4 girls on the monitor left the room. As they evaluated their movements, going, "That was good. Could have done a bit more," Prism Cherry quickly switched off the safe mode in the monitor side. The white room became shaded quickly and turned gray. The door slid downward, sealing the exit. She checked the server, making sure it was packed with drinks. She opened the third row from under the cabinet. She took out the pills for a number of people and arranged them on a desk. She was like a manager. When she was invited to this facility, she didn't think it'd turn out like this. Ah, man, I just needed a bit more time. You move around too much, Tempest. But you're all trying to mess with me. Well, of course we were. Acrobatics look nice and all, but try to reduce it in an actual fight, okay? Princess Deluge was leading as the four magical girls entered the monitor room. The boomerang-throwing Princess Tempest, the crescent sword-brandishing Princess Inferno, the hammer-swinging Princess Quake. The four of them together were the pure elements. When they first met, one by one, they had posed and greeted her. Each person's weapons, their costumes were also irregular. Quake had a tail that looked like a giant reptile's. Deluge's costume had scales in them. Tempest had a crown of laurels arranged in a ring. Inferno's hair tips were flickering. Hold on. Okay, sorry, the page moved. Inferno's hair tips were flickering and burning. Despite being a mess, they also partly had a sense of unity. They had different colored large jewels in their tiaras. Earth, water, fire, and wind type magic. A battle skill that was far too high to compare to Prism Cherry. Most of all, their atmosphere was similar. Oh, you've got the medicine. Thanks a bunch, Cherry. Love you, Cherry. Hey, sorry, but I clearly love Cherry more than you. Alright, Quake, want to show it? Everyone laughed. Prism Cherry laughed too. Even if they were all chaotically moving their bodies around in training, the four of them had fun and laughed. Rather than laughing along, you could say that Cherry wanted to laugh with them. That was the kind of laugh she had. Even bad jokes and lame puns made her laugh her guts out, as they were sisters with the best relationship, but they had no blood relation at all. In the underground lab located underneath the factory at the outskirts of the city, the four pure elements became magical girls. These four train in this base every day. Also, they think that magical girls all train the same way to pass. They also think magical girls fight invaders from another world called disruptors. In order to maintain their magical potential so they could transform, they had to take pills every day. Prism Cherry and the pure elements both recognized each other as magical girls, but to both of them the other seemed highly off. Prism Cherry decided to discuss it and would be okay no matter what they said, but once or twice she still couldn't hide her surprise. Was Prism Cherry's knowledge wrong? Were these girls wrong? Or were they both wrong? Whichever one was wrong, the existence of these monsters, called disruptors, that the pure elements were fighting from once every week or two was undoubtedly a fact. The disruptors were real monsters. They were sludge-like things with fangs like beasts. It attacks humans by using its whole body for the pleasure of it. Their physical abilities are comparable to a magical girl. Just swinging its arm could mow down large trees. They could even keep up with agile movements. What kind of world would send these monsters? Why would they send them here? Just thinking about it seemed horrible, and the more horrible it got, the more she understood just how big the situation she's gotten herself in. Oh, I just realized something. The poison girl, maybe she's the one sending him or something, because she had those like slime bubbly things around her and the character design things. And I said that maybe her power had something to do with slime, so maybe she's the one making the disruptors. But either way, I'm gonna keep reading. Okay, there was some huge pressure, but a large sense of joy was also connected to it. She was happy that she was involved in something unusual. It was fun. When she met them, she initially thought so as well. Unusual things would come first, and she had pleasure in keeping secrets. But now it's a little different. Inferno, your outfit's the only one that's underwear. You've got garter belts and stuff. Huh? Really? Wait, why are you eyeing my costume like that, Tempest? Deluge is also dressed like this, too. Deluge is wearing a swimsuit, though. Hey, why are you involving me in this? We're just talking about our appearances. It's not weird at all. Well, Cherry doesn't look like she cares about it. But it has nothing to do with me. Says the girl with the transparent skirt. What do you think, Inferno? Well, I'm probably gonna put her erotic ranking as number 1. Right, Quake? But if we're ranking it, then Tempest is also kind of, hey, it's not me, it's just how it's designed. She's been doing magical girl activities on her own until now. She was careful not to be found, she was never praised by anyone, never recognized by anyone, secretly wandering around the city at night, looking for people in distress. No one to complain to, no one to laugh with, alone, with no one to talk to. That was what's normal for her. Now it's different. She was laughing at Inferno's jokes, Deluge was watching over her at school, Quake recommended her manga, Tempest would talk about her first love. She was special, so how could she not enjoy it? Having mutual friends was fun. The pure elements were probably not magical girls that the Land of Magic would recognize. Her officer didn't even confirm any other magical girls in the area. Prism Cherry knowing these girls was a coincidence after coincidence. If she didn't break the rules and take charge of herself, she wouldn't be with these girls now. What would she do if the Land of Magic discovered their existence? She didn't think they'd just attack without questioning them, but she didn't think they'd have a good reaction either. Just looking at the lab equipment, she was sure that there was a large organization backing the pure elements, and they probably had a bad relationship with the Land of Magic. If that happened, she's decided that she'd stand between them as a mediator. She didn't think talking to people was her specialty, but she was the only official magical girl from the Land of Magic, so the only one that could work with the pure elements and be a bridge between them and the Land of Magic was her. This is how she'll repay them. These girls have given her happiness that she was sure she was never going to get. If they were ever in trouble, then it'll be her turn to help them. First, she'd have to talk to the person responsible for these girls, the one they called Professor. And it's been a long time since she's thought of this, but this person hasn't showed up at all. According to the four of them, it's never taken this long for the Professor to make an appearance before. The Professor's probably busy with something, said Inferno. Okay, I really, I love the pure elements. They are, so good. And that's another thing. I am very connected to and love these characters already, which makes me worried that they're just going to kill them off because they are so good. But yeah, I love the elements, and Prism Cherry, so good. Interesting though, we've spent all this time with them and we haven't been introduced to any of the other, well, counting Snow White, so we got 6 out of 16, so we have 10 more girls we haven't even seen yet. But it could be another thing like Limited, where the first few chapters introduce them each a group at a time. So maybe this chapter will handle these 6, and then 5 for the next chapter, and 5 for chapter 3. That seems like kind of a slow pacing, given there's only 6 chapters, and the chapters are so long. But I guess we'll see. Guess we'll see how things go. So we're now at page 44 with Princess Deluge, and I'm going to grab a sip of water really quick. Alright, now we're at page 44, Princess Deluge, Nami Aoki. Nami Aoki was a bright and fun magical girl. Quake, Inferno, and Tempest were probably bright and fun girls before they transformed too, right? Thought Deluge. She thought that way about her classmate Prism Cherry as well. The truth was different. Nami Aoki had a dark and damp middle school life, and was only able to experience happiness for the first time because she could transform into Princess Deluge. The old lady in her neighborhood said, "See you later," and when she replied, "I'll be going now," all she was thinking was, "Have to smile properly," or "My voice had to be firm," or "Is there a problem with how I look?" Yet she didn't show it outright. When she was in elementary school, there was bullying in class. Talking behind people's back to make them feel left out, but not to the point of punching or kicking. There wasn't any violence. But if she looked at what was happening, was it really any different than being punched or kicked around? Against an outcast who lost their energy day by day, even when they didn't look at anyone face to face, they'd be ridiculed behind their backs. They could just hear them laugh, whispering negative words like trash or creep. The cause was probably a trivial thing. She couldn't even remember what it was specifically. It was probably something important for an elementary schooler, but when she became a middle schooler, it was probably something unimportant she couldn't remember. Something you'd laugh about when you became an adult. It was all just an excuse. Whoever was in charge of most of the girls back then had a ding in her head, and took the chance. Whoever was in charge of most of the girls back then had a ding in her head and took the chance, and using that reason, she said something like, "That girl's so full of herself, isn't she?" From there, it gradually became larger, and by the time you noticed, it was one versus everyone, and she was finished. The girl's unity rose, and instead of venting, her atmosphere became brighter. It was all just a show. She wasn't even having fun. The outcast girl and Nami lived in the same neighborhood, and had been together since they were kids. She knew that girl wasn't a bad person. She didn't want to see her be sad or in pain. When her mother said, "Have a safe trip," it was painful to see her reply, "Okay, I'll be going now," with a smile. Yet Nami didn't do anything. She laughed along with the others. The talking behind her back escalated, and she didn't respond to any of the girls' greetings. She shouldn't be doing this. There has to be another way. Nami was this girl's only friend. The stress caused by thinking these depressing thoughts were let out by looking down on others. She collected stress, let it out, and because of that she gained even more stress, and it continued to cycle. This wasn't a school that didn't have reshuffling classes and students, so the stress continued until graduation. Did the outcast spend all the time she would have had to hang out with friends, which would just end up being with her being used as something to annoy by studying? Hold on. Okay. Did the outcast spend all the time she would have had to hang out with friends, which would just end up with her being used as something to annoy by studying? Okay. When she took the middle school test, she went to a private school. In the farewell party they had, that girl didn't attend. Nami's friends said things like teacher's pet, bookworm. Some of them split off and entered into different public schools in the area. The girl was in a different middle school, but she hasn't moved. Whenever she went to and from school, she could see the girl in her mother's face. That means she probably didn't tell her parents what happened at school. The girl didn't say anything, so Nami didn't say anything to her either. Despite passing by each other, they didn't look at each other's face. They were nothing more than passerby A and passerby B. Nami Aoki was bright and refreshing, but only then she became gloomy. Even if she wasn't at fault, she kept her eyes on her feet and didn't look at her, quickly walking by without saying anything. Even when she became a middle schooler, she practiced what she learned in elementary school. She wouldn't make enemies. She was concerned about how she looked, made as many friends as possible, followed current topics, became bright, became refreshing. She was living more diligently than she was in elementary school, too. In order to make it seem like she wasn't living diligently and to make it seem like she was living a happy and cheerful life, she had to be diligent. The outcast girl also seemed like she was having more fun than she was at elementary school. On holidays, she didn't like to go out with friends, but there were times when she did it anyway. She never showed that it was because she might get bullied. She never had the chance to. With a happy smile on her face, she would ride her bicycle to the other girls as they talked about something. Did that other girl also live a life where she didn't want to be hated anymore? Did she take her time in elementary school being bullied as a lesson and make sure it won't happen a second time? Did she live a life where she conformed to others? Maybe Nami just wanted to think that way. That girl probably wasn't thinking any of these annoying thoughts. She was probably living a more freeing life than Nami was, too. Nami wasn't free. Her club activities also depended on what others chose. Even when she was moving between classrooms, she never walked alone. She'd even prioritize what her friends wanted over wanting to go to the toilet. She didn't want to look like she wasn't free, so she had to live like she wasn't free. She'd stick with the others, measuring how close she was with them, while having a smile on her face as if she wasn't doing that. One day, while she was living her bright and refreshing yet dark and self-destructive day, one text message arrived in Nami's smartphone. Nami, who checked on the mysterious text from the study desk she never used for studying, was so shocked at what she read inside that she fell from her chair. Magical girls wanted. That's what the text said. She wanted to cry. The only one who knew Nami's phone numbers should just be her friends, which means one of her friends sent her this text message. This was worse. Right now Nami was being pranked and made fun of with a text message like this. She wanted to know what she did wrong, but she couldn't think of anything. But even in elementary school, bullying would begin with the most trivial things. She didn't know who sent this prank mail, but if it just ended here, she'd be happy. If it didn't grow from here, if she could eliminate the spark before it spread like wildfire, she'd be happy. People who couldn't get along with each other are hated. Being caught in a prank like this doesn't give her an instant-like charm. If she did that, she can figure out the identity of who sent this. and can change the atmosphere they have on her herself. Nami followed the instructions and went to the site that the text said. She filled out the necessary information and hit the submit button. She prayed that it would do something as she jumped into her futon. She was restless the following day, even though she wasn't careless while being in school. She felt more tired than usual. Who sent that prank mail? She wondered as she searched for the culprit. It was pretty elaborate. They probably borrowed a website and even installed a forum. She smiled. Even when she was playing around, she didn't trust anyone. To Nami, school was always a place like that. But today, that was especially prominent. The best way to not get bullied was to be on the side of the one teasing you. Teasing is no different from bullying. While being wrapped with depressing thoughts on the way back home, Nami was surprised when her mother handed her a letter. Inside the letter was something about the magical girl recruitment from before. She's been waiting since yesterday, today, and now this. Rather than being stiff, she was overflowing with motivation. Why did they have this much of a low opinion of Nami? There were no signs of them feeling that way today at school. If they were unified together with thoughts like let's tease her, let's make fun of her, let's get some laughs, then she'd be able to see through it. Nami was good at sensing that kind of atmosphere. If she can read the atmosphere, she wouldn't get bullied. She opened the envelope in her room. The mouth of it was sealed with hard tape, so she had to use scissors to cut it. Inside was an A4-sized paper, and there were several of them being used. They looked like application documents, notes that they must know her real identity, a notice that they'll be holding a briefing session in the municipal library this Sunday at 3 p.m. in the second conference room, written in a formal typeface. How were they going to do this? If they wanted to make her a laughingstock, she'd be annoyed long before she could dislike it or feel any pain from it. Okay, so that's where we're in at Get 48. Really, really good. I love that. Okay, so, sorry, my upper lip itches so bad. But, that was really, really good. Not only do I already like the connection between Akari and Snow White and what's going on with Snow White and Fall, I loved the introduction and backstory for Prism Cherry, and now I absolutely love this for Deluge. Like, it could have been much more serious, much more dark and all of that, but it was really, really, really cool. I like how it's deep and somewhat realistic. How she didn't bully this girl. Sorry, I noticed now in this preview that there's this weird light on my face. I'm gonna have to fix my lighting. Hang on. I'll fix it after I finish recording this. I can record the rest of this, but it's really, really good how she wasn't bullying the girl, but she stood back and let it happen. And I thought they were going to go sadder with it since this series has gone really dark, and just have something like, oh, the girl commits suicide or something, and Nami spends the rest of her life feeling guilty for it. But rather than that, the girl moves on with her life, but Nami can't move on with her life. She always feels like she saw that happen and doesn't want it to happen to her, and also it's something that she doesn't want to do herself. So that's really, really, really cool. So yeah, I guess that's about it. I love the chapter. I've already talked about everything pretty much. So like if you did like the video, and comment on there to tell me what you thought of this chapter and what you thought of my thoughts on it. Subscribe for more. Magical Girl Raising Project, much more on the channel. Follow on Twitter if you want. I can try to keep you updated there on stuff with the channel or talk to you there. And if you want a link to our Discord server to talk to me or more of us about Magical Girl Raising Project or anything else, just ask and I'll give you a link. It's free and open for anyone. That is it. Thank you once again for watching, and I'll see you all next time.